It's been a little while since we were together, and I thought that I would take the opportunity to have a little Valentine's celebration with you since it's almost Valentine's Day. I first have this lovely bundle of flowers that were actually gifted to me by one of my friends, and that was a really sweet thing for him to do. So now I have this beautiful bunch of flowers in my home, and I'll lean back so you can see it. They are really, really lovely, and they smell really lovely, and they really contribute to just a really happy sort of atmosphere around here. So I'm very grateful for these, and to have good friends like that who will do me little favors. They do smell really nice. It's not like a perfumey smell, just kind of, natural and floral, obviously. But it is Valentine's Day, or just about. So I wanted to take this opportunity to, oh gosh, where did I put it? Oh, there it is. I have all of my materials just kind of scattered around me. But so many of you, so many people reacted with such kindness when I posted my reading of a story, a book that I have written. And that book begins at Christmas time, which was when I made that last video, and it is now almost Valentine's, which kind of is perfect because there is a Valentine's scene, a couple of chapters involved. So I would like to as I can. I might have to do a little bit of soft spoken, just because it's very hard for me to differentiate between characters and all of that when I'm whispering, so bear with me, but here we go. The upcoming St. Valentine's Parade. Oh my goodness, I already messed up. The upcoming St. Valentine's Day Parade was a yearly event for the King and Queen to celebrate their love among the people. They would take a carriage through the city, and it was customary for onlookers to kiss as they passed or exchange gifts. Avi wanted me to accompany him in what he called his bachelor carriage. In previous years, women in the crowd would often scream their adoration, and he humoured them by throwing flowers into the throng. He told me he hated it, but it was the role of the prince. And this year, there would be no flowers for the crowd, only me, announcing to the world I'd taken him off the market. I was convinced I would be the target of every single woman's hatred, but I agreed to the plot. On St. Valentine's Day, my life would be forever changed. I had to ask Michael for the day off. We opened in little more than a week, and I knew he wouldn't be pleased. But if all went as planned, it would likely be the biggest opening we'd ever had. He seemed to understand that part. You need the whole day. The parade isn't until 2 or 3. Well, there is the crucial matter of introducing me to the King and Queen beforehand. I'm sure they'll have questions. It could take a while. Yes, I had to meet his parents. They must have heard rumours since we'd been trapped by the threat, but thus far we had avoided each other. King Salvatore and Queen Harriet were old and traditional, and I had a feeling we were going to be the most awkward of acquaintances. Michael smirked. My, look at you go. What are we wearing to meet the royals? I honestly hadn't given it a thought. What did one wear in February to meet the parents of the man she loved, who also happened to rule the country? Well, a dress of some sort, yes? He chuckled. Would you like to borrow from wardrobe? Just this once? I nodded. Yes, please. Very good. You remember Suzette's ensemble from last spring? I think that would be appropriate. Last spring, Suzette played a wife and mother much older than I was, but she had been a titled lady. The costume wasn't too ghastly. Thank you, I said. And I'll work twice as hard in final dress rehearsals, I promise. I know you will. Can't have you disappointing all your newfound fans. So I had the day and I had an outfit, which didn't make me any less nervous when I arrived at the palace on Valentine's morning. Avi was dressed for the parade in his princely uniform. It seemed so much more real like that. I much preferred him in his festive pyjamas. Are they expecting me? I asked. He shrugged. They're expecting me. I have to write myself on their schedule, so we haven't exactly talked about it. But I think they know what's going on. Intelligence is terrible with secrets, can you believe it? But we'll be fine. Have you ever seen the reception room? A lot of class field trips stop in when they're here. I shook my head. I'd never been to the palace before Christmas. Well, think of it as a large, fancy parlour. If my father stands, you stand. If he asks you to sit, you obey. Just be generally respectful and it will be a good impression. Do I curtsy? Oh, yes, of course. Yes, and only speak when spoken to. Address them as your majesties at least 3 times before sir or ma'am. And let's see what else. What else? Oh, that's plenty to remember. How can there be more? He grinned. You'll do famously. Just follow my lead. Come on, we have to keep our appointment. I tried to breathe. They were only people. And Avi was their son, so how intimidating could they be? There was no throne in the reception room, but a large chair by the hearth seemed to serve the same purpose. The king was seated and the queen stood beside him. They looked like a portrait in such a pose. Avi bowed and I curtsied. Happy Valentine's, he said casually enough. All set for the ride? The queen scoffed. It is positively frigid out. And you know all about that, now wouldn't you, old girl? The king muttered in apparent bad humour. Oh, fantastic, we're in a good mood, Ovi teased. Well, I would like to introduce to you Miss Alice Dyer. I've invited her to ride along today. They both looked at me and I curtsied again. Uncertainly. She knew, the king asked. What's wrong with Lionel? Oh, Father, she isn't an aide. It's Valentine's Day. Alice is my girlfriend. We thought it would be a sweet gesture to share the ceremony. They kept their eyes on me, but clearly only spoke to him. Who is she? The Queen asked. I've never heard of the Dyers. Oh, tell me you didn't pick her up in one of those foreign countries. Can she even speak? Avi nodded. Very well. She's an actress, actually, at our very own Arlington. I hear she's quite up and coming. Something of a star. He grinned at me, and I couldn't help smiling. I am nothing of the sort, Your Majesties. The prince is far too complimentary. You mean to say your family allows such a thing? A theatrical career? The king asked, not at all pleased with the idea. Oh, my family is rather non-existent. My father died some years ago. I never had a mother. Ah, so you're an heiress, bored and entitled, playing mistress of the house. And you've chosen to act. How quaint. I blushed a bit. Your Majesty, I am not an heiress. My father was a tailor. We're tradespeople. Historically, dyer meant wool dyers. We've always been in textiles, I suppose. Excepting me, of course, who is an actress, as we have established. I'd taken to rambling, which was not good. They kept staring at me. Well, Avi said, we just wanted to make introductions before the parade. It'll likely be in the press, so I thought, in the press, the king demanded. You've brought a common showgirl home and you want it publicised. Oh, at the very least, be like your grandfather and keep the whoring private. Good God, do you mean to ruin us all? I thought perhaps he was making a cruel joke at my expense. His tone was rather incredulous and he was very nearly laughing. Father, that is uncalled for. Alice is my girlfriend since before Christmas. I happen to love her very much. My cheeks were burning red, but I couldn't tell if it was Ovi's kindness or the shame of his parents' gaze. Well, isn't this what we need? The Queen huffed. The lords are angry enough, what with the concessions for commoners. How do you suppose they'll react to this? No, we will not have it. We can't. The king nodded. It is far too delicate a climate. Miss Dyer, quite frankly, your presence is an insult. Go and watch the parade from the street like your sort were meant to. Xavier won't be seeing you any longer. He spoke so matter-of-factly, I wondered if it were true. Could he break us up with one simple order? Avi took my hand firmly. I most certainly will. She's my Valentine's date. I introduced you as a courtesy, but you absolutely do not get to treat her this way. She will be in the parade. And I say she won't, the king insisted, and he stood to make the point. That carriage belongs to me. If she comes anywhere near it, I will have her arrested for trespassing. There will be no commoners in the royal ceremony. Oh, there is no law. I am king. I don't need a law. You will only be seen with girls of proper birth, not some stage whore orphan. My God, have you lost your mind? You will share your Valentine's carriage when you have found a proper girl to be your queen. Avi was seething. Perhaps I already have. The queen held her head, and the king seemed ready to explode, but he maintained a practiced cool. Now that I absolutely forbid, he said through his teeth. Father, you seem to be forgetting I won freedom of choice. Alice is as real a candidate as anyone. Choice of eligible girls, you daft little... Obviously, we didn't mean this. We made no stipulations, because who could have guessed you would be so stupid? I forgot myself and pleaded. Your Majesty, you will say nothing, he spat. You are nothing, and you will always be nothing. If my son chooses to carry on with you, so be it. But come near my carriage, I will arrest you. And if you even think of aspiring for more, I will do far worse. You are dismissed. Go on, or I will have the guards remove you. I wanted to defy him. I wanted to stand my ground and defend myself against his horrible remarks. But I knew he meant it, and I couldn't risk an arrest. Ovi took hold of me. "Let's go, love." He led me away. I didn't pay much attention where. I felt more miserable than I ever had. I'd met noble-born people before. They'd come to my shows, but not once had I been insulted for my birth. That was a thing of the past. It was medieval. And yet the way the king and queen looked at me seemed to brand my very soul with the stain of inferiority. Somehow we ended up in Ovi's suite. To my credit, I didn't even cry, not even as he drew me into his arms. "You have to believe I would not have subjected you to that had I anticipated." Oh, what the hell was that? I know my parents are traditionalists, but that was outright bigotry. I've never seen them behave that way. God, Alice, I am so sorry. I nodded. "I'm fine. I am not so delicate I'd believe any of that. He's my king, you know? I feel like now for the rest of my life I'm an enemy of the state." "No, love, he'll warm to you. He'll have to. Though for today, perhaps it's best you not ride along. We'll make a new plan that does not involve him, and once you're beloved by the masses, he'll have to come round." I nodded. That was a lot of pressure, winning over an entire country in order to earn his father's approval. I wasn't sure I was up to it. "Well," I said, "I have the day off. I suppose I'll watch the parade the way that people like me are meant to." I used to stand out by my father's shop when I was younger. Oh, you'll know it. It's on 4th Street, and there's a little fountain by the boulevard. I will call out to you loud as I can, and you'd better throw me a flower. Right to me, understand? Otherwise, I will never forgive you." He managed to smile. "You have my word." "Oh, darling, I feel awful about this. I know. But I've a thick, common skin. My father was called worse names in his day. He and Uncle George both. Surely I can grin and bear it for a while longer." If Uncle George knew how I'd been treated, he would have used it to fuel the cause. A horrid little part of me considered whether he might have been right about the king all along. Ovi kissed me. "You are the strongest girl I know, and I am grateful for it. Go and find a spot close as you can to the barricade. Perhaps after the parade's finished, Lionel can take us back to yours, and we'll work something else out. I love you, Alice. I'm so sorry to have ruined our first Valentines." I smiled at how sweet he was. "Don't you worry. I'm sure we'll have plenty more." I left the palace and began to wander down the parade trail. I was still all done up, and on occasion one of the onlookers would glance at me, only to realise I was nobody. Nobody at all. It was a solo parade of my own shame, all the way to 4th Street. Happy Valentines indeed. I hadn't been to the old shop in ages. I knew the man running it. He'd worked there when my father was alive. But I couldn't bring myself to go inside. It wouldn't be the same without him. I found a spot along the road, right behind the security barricade. I thought it sad they had to put little fences up to keep us separate, but now I knew how the king truly felt about us lowly, common people. And truth be told, I wanted nothing to do with him either. Nothing but his son. As the parade started up, I heard the crowds of earlier streets reacting to the royals. I heard the marching band begin to play the anthem and then fall into another peppy tune. As the carriages came into view, people began waving and calling out their affection. The king and queen were all smiles as they greeted us from a distance. They waved in that polite, practiced way that, for whatever reason, turned my stomach. Ovi stood in his carriage, and I watched him chuck a carnation to a little girl with a plastic tiara on her head. He was so charming. I loved him with all my heart. "Ovi," I called out, waving hard as I could. He had to at least look at me or I'd feel completely beneath him. I wasn't usually so desperate for validation, but his parents had done a number on me. Couples around me began kissing each other, and the rest of the crowd cheered their love. I kept right on waving and screeching. "Ovi, I'm here." Finally his eyes found mine. I watched him smile and let my hand fall. That was my Avi. That was the man I loved and who loved me, standing in a carriage, in a uniform, with a bunch of carnations while the world cheered. It was so fitting, so absolutely perfect. I didn't need to ride with him. His smile was everything I needed and more. Suddenly he dropped his flowers, and in a daring stunt leapt from the moving carriage. The crowd was in uproar. Was he hurt? Was something wrong with the carriage? I wondered the same until he started running. Right for me. When he reached the barricade, he drew me close, as it allowed, and kissed me without a word. It wasn't a polite kiss either. He kissed me like he knew me, like he loved me. And if I hadn't been over the moon in a daze, perhaps I would have heard the crowd screaming in shock. Avi, what on earth? I demanded when he let me go. If they won't make you public, I will. I love you, Alice. I want the world to know. I want my father to know. But mostly, I want you to know. I love you, and this was meant to be a day for love. A day for us. I shook my head. It is incredibly foolish. Right. Sorry, you're right. I should have warned you. I kissed him. I love you too. He grinned and kissed me again. Then in a blink, he lifted me up over the barricade and began running once again with me in tow. People were shrieking and cheering, and cameras were flashing. I was public, all right. I'd never live this down. Where are we going? I asked over the din. If I get in the carriage, I'll be arrested. Don't you worry. There is always an escape plan for these sort of things. He led me to an alleyway where a car was parked. Lionel stood in front of it, shaking his head. Oh, I know you don't expect me to leave my post and be your getaway car, he said. Come on, we can't go back after that. It's a safety hazard. I'll owe you one, and I'll hold you to it. Get in quickly. We got in the car and Lionel sped out of the parade zone. For a while yet, I was still anonymous, just some girl in the crowd. But soon there'd be a name to the photographs, and suddenly Alice Dyer would mean something entirely different. That was incredibly stupid, Lionel scolded as Avi laughed and held on to me in the back seat. Miss Dyer, I hope you're prepared to part with your private life for good. My God, never in all my years has a prince given the people precisely what they wanted. A genuine scandal, where they'll never stop talking about it. And of course, you'll need a guard. You can have Stuart, I suppose. Stuart? I hadn't even considered needing a guard of my own. Didn't he try to shoot me when we first met? No, he meant well. Anyhow, the king won't notice his absence, which is what you need. If he finds out we're supporting you, my whole team might be out of work. Lionel, you work for me, Avi said. I'll make sure you're protected. Thank you for doing this. I don't know why he was so upset with the idea of the carriage. Neither do I, but I promise you he'll be more upset by this. Where are we off to? Oh, we can go to my house, I said. We can watch whatever disaster is unfolding on the broadcast coverage. Avi tugged me nearer. Are you angry with me? No, I sighed. I should be. But truth be told, it was the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. I may even love you more for it. He kissed me, only briefly for Lionel's sake, but still, it was heavenly. When we reached my home, we all three went inside very quickly. Lionel stayed by the door and peeked out the window now and then while checking in with other security people on his phone. Avi and I sat down to watch the broadcast. He was still in his uniform and looked very out of place in my tiny home. The very first image was the king, still in his carriage but scowling as it carried him back to the palace. The queen was still putting on a show and waving like everything had gone to plan. Then the screen cut to an image of me. Oh, someone had gotten the perfect shot of me and Avi at the barricade. That was gorgeous. Perhaps I'd have it framed someday. As of yet, this mystery girl is still unknown. We are asking that anyone with information on her identity call into our studio. Let's return to Robert in the field. Robert, what on earth is happening out there? Robert was a young newscaster, expecting a simple parade story, and he was quite flustered. Yeah, well, it's quite loud. People are confused, I know I am. She's being heralded our Valentines Princess, but no one seems to know anything further. Avi nudged me. Valentine's Princess. That is adorable. I blushed. I do hope it doesn't stick. Well, you're welcome to call in. I shoved him. You call in. I hadn't meant it, of course. I thought we were merely playing. But then he went and picked up my phone and dialed the number on the screen. I tried to stop him, but he held me back. Hello, Channel 7. I have information on your Valentine's Princess. You can broadcast me live if you like. Avi, what are you thinking? I demanded. Well, they already know. Best finish it off. Yes, that's right. Well, I'm Xavier Dorofich. I should think I'm incredibly reliable. Quite all right. Take your time. I watched in mild horror as the studio newscaster received the breaking story. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm told we have Prince Xavier on the line to make a statement. Your Highness, can you hear me? Loud and clear. His voice echoed on the television. What can you tell us about this girl? Was it in fact a random encounter? Oh no, I'm not that exciting. No, her name is Alice Dyer, and we've been seeing each other about 2 months now. I'm sorry for the stunt. She should have been in the carriage with me. Suppose I got carried away seeing her on the street alone. Is she a princess, as we've heard? No, Alice is an actress. A beautiful actress. But if things go well, she may be a princess yet. He grinned at me, and I actually hid my face in embarrassment. You mentioned she was meant to ride in your carriage. Did something go wrong? Well, all I'll say in the matter is there are people in this country who would disapprove of my relationship with Alice. To those people, I would say you could not be more wrong. She's the most incredible girl I have ever known, and I have known plenty of princesses. She's my equal in every way, and I am so lucky to have her affection. She was slighted on Valentine's Day, and I had to make sure we redeemed the day. I think she'll be very cross with me if I say more, so we'll leave it there. Thank you. He hung up, but the story continued. My name, spoken and printed over and over. What's going to happen? I wondered aloud, watching my new life unfolding. Avi took me back in his arms. A lot. But I'll get you through it, don't you worry. They flashed that picture on the screen again. The two of us together in the open, the barricade between us, present yet ineffective. I leaned against him, tried to convince myself it was a disaster. By all accounts, it was. I'd be flooded with questions from all directions. Avi's safety and mine would be jeopardized once my address was discovered. The king was sure to find the means to retaliate. But as I looked at us and held on to him, it became increasingly difficult to resent any of it. We were gorgeous. We were in love in a brash and wild way, causing a stir. Never in my life had I felt so important. Not because I was dating a prince, but because I, common stage whore orphan I was, suddenly had the entire country in a stir and wrapped around my little finger. And I will leave it at that. So that was chapter 10 and 11, chapters 10 and 11 of Pretender. It was a little bit of a time jump, but I think you kind of understand what's going on. So Alice is common. She doesn't have a title. She is an actress, but she's not like famous or, have any sort of power, influence, anything like that. And the king really does not like her. They disapprove of her. They think Avi should be with a princess or someone with a title. It's kind of a cliched concept. But that's part of the conflict. As the story continues, the king takes it up a notch with his hatred. He kind of teams up with kind of a gang. They start kidnapping, they start holding hostage. There's this whole scary thing that happens. So it does get really kind of dramatic, and it's a little bit less rom-com-y towards the end. But in the beginning, it's a Valentine's. Well, in the beginning, it's a Christmas story, but then middle way, it's a Valentine's story. So I thought I would share. I thought it was relevant to the moment. So I want to thank you for spending some Valentine's time with me. I'm, of course, still figuring out what I want to be doing with this channel, with my life, and so I probably won't be very consistent, but every now and again I'm hoping that I'll be back with you and we can have some time together. So do let me know what kinds of activities you'd like for us to do. We can read more, we can do more show and tells, we can have talks about the universe and life and everything and anything and nothing at all. I think the point is just that we spend time together. So thank you again for being here with me, for indulging me, for listening to my silly little stories, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.